71. Let's turn our songbooks to page 71. 71. Glad to have everyone with us this morning. As the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs after you. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. I want you more than gold or silver, only you can satisfy. You alone are the real joy giver and the apple of my eye. You alone are my strength, my shield. To you alone may my spirit yield. You alone are my heart desire, and I long to worship you. Glad to have everyone with us. If you're visiting with us, we're especially glad to have you. Hope everybody picked up a lesson on the back table back there. It'll be the same lesson you had, the last lesson you got last week. If you got last week's lesson, you're in good shape. If you don't, I've got some extra ones here. Does anyone need a lesson? We'll have some guys bring it right there to your pew if you wanted a lesson. Okay, very good. Luke 17, 1 through 10. Jesus has just finished in Luke 16 talking about what happens after death. And we went through several weeks of talking about what happens after a person dies. And then he starts this. Now, of course, the Bible wasn't written with chapters and verses. And so this is just a continual thing as far as the original writing is concerned. And Jesus, of course, didn't talk in chapters and verses. This is a continual thing as far as he's concerned. He's continuing his thought. He's continuing this lesson, these lessons, this teaching as far as that's concerned. And so we kind of got to keep it in context of that, because as we study this, we go, okay, now he's told me the importance of being prepared for paradise or torment when we die, heaven and hell, after judgment, things of that nature. Now then, he said, this is what's important. He said, I'm going to give you 4 very needful things. Watch out for these things, because these are things that will help you to be prepared and keep you from wasting a life and keep you from being unprepared on the day of judgment. Luke 17, 1 through 10. Then he said to the disciples, if it is possible that it is impossible that no offense should come, but woe to him through whom they do come. Verse 2. It would be better for you if a millstone were hung around your neck and he be thrown into the sea, than he should offend one of these little ones. Take heed to yourself. If your brother sins against you, rebuke him. And if he repents, forgive him. And if he sins against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times in a day returns and says, I repent, you should forgive him. And the apostle said to the Lord, increase our faith. So the Lord said, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you shall say to a mulberry tree, be pulled up by the roots and be planted in the sea, and it will be done. It will obey you. And which of you, having a servant plying and tending sheep, will say to him when he comes in from the field, come at once and sit down to eat? But will he not rather say to him, prepare something for my supper, and gird yourself and serve me until I've eaten and drank, and after you will eat and drink? Does he thank the servant because he has done the things that he's commanded? I think not. So likewise, you, when you have done all things which you're commanded, say, I am an unprofitable servant. We have done what was our duty to do. So Jesus explains 4 things here, and we oftentimes people miss these things. But he says these are things that are very important. We touched on this or started this last week. I want to go back over the first part here. The first thing Jesus says here is be careful to give no offense. Your first blank there is no offense. Temptation is sure to come every day. The word temptation actually means in the Greek a baited stick in a trap. And so when just like putting something in a trap to catch someone. And we're going to be tempted every day. Hope you've thought about that this week. Temptation. If you're not thinking about temptation, and you're not aware of temptation, and you're not keeping it before you, it's got you. It's got you already. Because our tendency is to go, well, everything's okay, I'm doing things right. No. Here he's saying, your first thing, bless you, your first thing is be aware of the tendency of temptation. Because the man who thinks he stands, he take heed lest he falls. You see, so many times we're concerned about other people, what's happening with them. We're not concerned about our own self. What are the things in my life that I've got to be cautious, I've got to be careful about? What are things happening? Satan is so subtle. And here Jesus said, watch out about this. Number one thing here, watch out about temptation. Jesus says, woe. Your next blank says, woe. It's the man that causes another to fall. By our attitudes, our words, neglect of duty, we need to bring, we bring spiritual harm to others by our attitudes and our words and neglecting duty and things. So oftentimes, temptation is not tempted to do something. It's because we are tempted not to do something. Tempted not to do something. Sometimes there's two types of sin. I mentioned this last week. The sin of commission, we commit sin, and then omission. We don't do something we should do. So often I talk to people, I say, well, I didn't do anything wrong. Well, maybe you didn't. That's great. But did you do something right? Did we do the right thing? On Judgment Day, you will not only be judged for the things you did wrong, but also the things you didn't do that were right. So when we examine these things, go, wait a minute, what am I tempted not to do that are right things to do, that Jesus would do as far as that's concerned? What are the attitudes? What are the words and things of that nature? We as Christians cannot, your next blank there's not, have the attitude, I live as I please. No one tells me what to do. I'm a free man. What I do is my own business. And there are, of course, others. It's been pointed out to me this week, there's other things that people say, and there are other things we say along those lines. You're not the boss of me. That's one I've heard a lot, you know. Here's the thing. God is saying, be careful about these things because we get this attitude of, nobody's going to tell me what to do. This last week, I heard one person say, I'm an adult. You don't have to tell me what to do. And I thought, well, you might think you're adult, but you're not doing adult things, you see. So many times we have these attitudes of, and God said, be careful because that leads to temptation. Luke 17:2, Jesus said, it would be better for them to have a millstone hung around their neck and drown than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. Now these little ones, he's not talking about little children. He's talking about necessarily little children of Christ, Christians, young Christians, people that are young in the faith and things of that nature. Matthew and Mark say, little ones that believe in me, little ones that believe in me. So he says it's better to have a millstone hung around our neck and drowned than to cause one of these people to be lost because they're believers and they fall away because we've been a bad example and haven't done the right things. Be careful to give no offense. It'd be better to die than to give an offense to someone else, to be offensive as far as other people are concerned. And Luke 17:3 and 4 says, this is our second point. First is give no offense. The second thing is be careful to take no offense. So it's one thing to give offense, be offensive. It's another thing to take offense. Your blank there is take. If others sin against us, he says rebuke him. Be frankness with kindness and mercy. So he says, if other people offend you, don't just ignore it and walk away. Deal with it. Deal with it. Go, look what happened here. Look what's going on here. Now, that's not being rude. It's not being hateful. It's not being harsh. It's not being judgmental. It's just going, wait a minute. That was offensive, what you did. I've shared with you some of the things that are offensive as far as I'm concerned. Might not offend you at all, but it's offensive to me. I have it happen often, several times a week, some of the things as far as that's concerned. And I'm learning not to take offense by it because people don't mean to be harsh and hard, rude by doing that kind of thing. experienced this last night. Went to the store, went to United. The lady, brings up the bill, and she folds up I'm sorry, that wasn't at United, that was at Walgreens. Rolls up the bill, puts my change underneath the receipt, and she hands it all to me and says, there you go. I stood there. Well, see, I've been raised in the South. I don't know how you've been raised, but in the South, I've been taught you don't just put a person's change back in their hand. You count it out, starting with the item, and count the change out to it to where you got the amount. And I realize that's not the custom tradition these days, but I was taught that's rude. That's not the way to do. And so I stand there and I count my change back and I go, you got it right. We'll see you later. Thank you very much. Walk away. I don't rebuke them and make them hard. Sometimes they go, was that right? And I'll go, well, yeah, but I was taught that's rude. And they go, rude? And I go, yeah, you don't just throw a person's money back in their hand and walk away. That's like saying, trust me, but I don't trust you, you see. But there's a lot of things in our society, and that's just one thing. Not opening a door, keeping a door open for a young person, a woman, or an older person, and letting them through. All those kinds of things have been drilled into me young on, and because they don't happen, it grates me as offensive when people don't do this. Not just for me, but for other people. Kindness, manners, you see. And I take some responsibility for it because I feel like my age, the kind of person, I need to be teaching young people. This is not what we do, you see. That's offensive to older people. And some people just blow it off. It's not important. No, it is important, you see, because that's what he's talking about here. Be careful about being offended, but also going offensive things as far as concerned. Being careful, but rebuking it and going, okay, that doesn't mean harsh and hard, but going, here's the right way for this to happen as far as concerned. Reason with people who are doing wrong. Often people don't know how to make things right. And I put that in your notes because oftentimes people don't know how to make things right. They don't intend to be that way. They just haven't been taught. The example hadn't been set for them. Somebody hadn't helped them understand. So we need to reason with them. I do this with young people all the time. I did it with a young person yesterday. Reason with them. Going, listen, here's the way this needs to be. And it's so neat because the ones I get to share that with are wanting to know. They want to know, how do I do the right thing? What is the right thing? I wasn't raised up with my mother and father teaching me manners. My grandmother taught me manners. I moved to Elk City, Oklahoma, 1963. I was 13 years old. I'd been living with my mother and father all the time. My mother left me out here, my older sister, my brother. We lived a year with my grandmother. And I don't know for sure how old she was. She was old as dirt to me, but she was probably 50 years old. She wasn't that old. But during that year period of time, she spent everything about her. She was a widow. They're by herself right over here on Eisenhower. And she spent all of her time teaching us manners, table manners, etiquette, how to speak to each other, how to talk to each other. I'll never forget the day. We rolled our newspapers. My brother and I had paper routes. We rolled our newspapers in there on her living room floor. And I went through a phase of calling him bad names. And I called him a bad name. I called him dirty, stinking, rotten rat. Now, that was the name. I said, you dirty, stinking, rotten rat. Why don't you do it? She come in, she goes, and I said, what is it? She said, do you know what you just called your brother? And I said, yeah. I called him dirty, stinking, rotten rat. She said, what if the preacher walked up on the front porch and heard you calling your brother a dirty, stinking, rotten rat? How would that be? I said, I don't know. You call him one. I'll go on the front porch and listen and see how that sounds. She said, well, I learned my lesson. That was the last time I ever called my brother a dirty, stinking, rotten rat. I'm just saying, don't assume everybody knows it's the wrong thing to do. Help people understand. And I feel like as older people, we have a great responsibility towards our children and our mates and our friends and our neighbors and loved ones. Help them understand, this is not Jesus. This is not what Jesus would do. I would not take anything for that year with that old woman. Learn those things. It's been so helpful in life. I carry a handkerchief in my back pocket. I got one right there right now today. I never use a handkerchief because she taught me you carry a handkerchief. You always carry a handkerchief. And I go, why should I carry a handkerchief? And she said, because somebody else might need your handkerchief. Now, I have offered my handkerchief to a lot of people. But it's just those kinds of things. Go, wait a minute. You need to carry a comb. You need to carry a handkerchief. You need to keep yourself clean. All these kinds of things. Well, don't assume everybody else knows. If you get offended, help them understand in a loving way, this is the thing to do. This is what a gentleman does. This is what a lady does. This is the way that we're supposed to act as far as that's concerned. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. This is the way things are. And it's disrespectful. And it's dishonoring. But slowly but surely, as it does. And I don't know that it's just different parts of the country. There are great things that people do out in this part of the country as well. At the same time, just like you're pointing out, these are gradual things that don't matter anymore. And we go, wait a minute. It's not because, it's horrible. Here, this is the right thing to do. Teaching the right thing as far as manners are concerned and biblical principles are concerned. Sometimes we have the wrong attitude as far as people are concerned. And I've written several things here on your notes. Someone is doing wrong. It's their business. Well, it is their business for doing wrong. At the same time, in a loving way, we need to help people to understand it's not just your business. This is the right thing to do as far as life's concerned. It's no skin off my back if they do wrong and those kind of things. Well, it really is. Because if we don't share with each other, especially as Christians, this is the right way to do this thing. It's this situation, these things are to be done. Then it's wrong. Sometimes we got the attitude of they'll have to answer for God for that. So, yeah, they will have to answer for God. But I'll have to answer too if I don't help them and correct them and help them as far as life is concerned. And we're such a society that's so proud of our privacy. We want privacy. I'm not getting in their privacy. They're not getting my business. Well, it's not getting in each other's business. It's loving enough to go, wait a minute. Here's the right thing for this to happen. It's teaching. It's helping people, admonishing people to do the right thing. Galatians 6, verse 1 says, I hope you got this marked in your Bible. If a brother is taken in a fall, restore such a one gently. If a brother is taken in a fall, he doesn't say if you want to. He says your job is. If a person is taken in a fall, restore such a one gently. Whether it's somebody you're working with that's in jail, somebody in your neighborhood, somebody in your family, somebody in the church. If they're taken in a fall, restore them. Help them get back right, gently. You see, by setting that example, loving them. That's Galatians 6, verse 1. We must forgive. The next blank there is forgive. We must forgive. You're under number 2, taking no offense. We must forgive. God forgives us. We must forgive others. Now, I don't know about you, but this is a very difficult thing to do, to get through to people, help people understand the importance of value of forgiveness. Matthew 5, verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Now, when we're merciful towards other people, we're gentle toward them, we're merciful to them. And God says, I'll be merciful towards you if you'll be merciful towards other people. Matthew 7, verse 1. With what judgment we judge, we'll be judged. He says, take this thing as a lesson of going, wait a minute. The way we're treating other people is the way that we're going to be treated. God has said, be careful about this. If you want me to be good to you and forgive you, you need to forgive other people. Why is forgiveness so difficult to do? Why is forgiveness so difficult? Why don't we just automatically forgive? I've had people tell me, watch out about her. That woman holds a grudge. There's things happened 7 years ago she gets upset with. Why is it so hard, you see? It's amazing because we focus on what other people are doing to us instead of what we're doing to other people. Have you noticed that? How we go, oh, look what they did. I imagine if we took a poll today and made a list, you can remember everything everybody's ever stolen from you that you know of. They've stolen. They took that. That was mine. They shouldn't have taken that. I can remember things. But have you forgiven it? Let it go. Going, wait a minute. You see, the thing about this is God says if you don't forgive, then it's continuing to happen to you over and over again. It's like we're reliving it. God says, I want you to let it go. Just let go of it. You travel light. Don't keep on holding on to things, but let go. How many times are we to forgive? Now, this is where it gets technical. Jesus says, here's the thing. Matthew 18, Peter said, how many times am I to forgive him? If somebody offends me, goes against me. 7 times? Now, it's interesting Peter says 7 times here. Because what he's saying is, 3 is the important word to the Jew and their culture. 3 is important. It's amazing because when you do something 3 times, it's great. That's required of you. You need to do things 3 times. And what 3 is to them is, if somebody does something once, you forgive them. If they do it to you twice, you very kindly go, this is the 2nd time, and I'm going to forgive them because I'm such a forgiving person. And if they forgive you, if they do it the 3rd time, you go, boy, this is as generous as it gets right here. I'm going to forgive them now. Well, Peter says 7 times? Should we forgive them 7 times? And Jesus is saying, yeah, I know what you're getting. That you're doubling into 3, that's 6. You add 1 to it, that's about as forgiving as you can get. Twice as much as anybody's expected to, and add 1, 7 times. But get Jesus' answer. The Jews required for 3. Jesus says 70 times 7. 490 times. Taking literal. He's not talking about taking it literal. He said 490 times. You just keep on forgiving them. You learn to be a forgiving person, you see. And when we're forgiving, then we're like Jesus. Jesus, I just keep forgiving. It almost brings tears to my eyes when I think about how much God has forgiven me. Have you thought about that lately? How much He's forgiven you and forgiven you and forgiven you and forgiven you on a daily basis. Not even counting on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, in a lifetime. He says, I love you. I'm forgiving you. I don't have a number, but I want you to be like that. You be forgiving. Now, don't misunderstand. God is saying when somebody does something against you, you don't repay. You say, you forgive, you see. But He also says in Romans 12, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. I'll take care of this. You don't take care of it. You forgive it, and you forget it, and you don't repay it, you see. But if they don't repent, I'll take care of it in the end. It's not like they're going to get away scot-free. It's just trust Him with it. Turn it over to Him. Now, God, why are you doing that with us? Why do you require that of us? Because of our nerves. Our nerves, you see. A person who doesn't forgive has nerve problems, anger problems, bitterness, anxiety, is hurt, you see, grieves, goes through all these bad things that Satan wants us going through. God says, I don't want that for you. Just write it off. Just forget it. Just forget it. Just let it go. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to forget it, but you forgive it, see? Every day, over and over again, just forgive it, forgive it, forgive it, forgive it. It's much easier, though, when you focus on how desperately you need forgiveness to forgive. 7 is a complete number, and Peter's using this number, it's a complete number. They understand. What if someone just keeps repenting and asking for forgiveness over and over again? What if they do it and they mess up, they do it, they do it, they do it? Jesus tells us it's His business to judge. His. That's a capital H on His. Anything you write about God is capitalized. It's His deal to judge. God says, I'm the one that judges that. You leave the judging to me. For it is ours to forgive. So the whole thing of forgiveness is His deal. We just let it go. So let's take a little check up in the neck up now. How are you doing? How are you doing? Are you forgiven? Are you letting things go? How long does it take you to let things go? You go, well, I'll hold on to it for a while, and finally the quicker you can forgive. No, not today, not now, you see. Get in the habit of letting this go now. Years ago, when I first came here, I told you about the phone call. Get a phone call one Monday morning. Little old lady called me up. She saw, Gerard, I know you, and you've been in my home, and you know my condition. I'm terminally ill. I'm going to die. I said, I'm so sorry. I know that. We talked about that. I pray. I know. That's not why I'm calling you. I said, okay, what are we going to talk about? She says, I'm a bitter old woman. And I don't want to die like this. I don't want to die like this. I don't want to die bitter and angry. I just can't. What can I do? I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. But I'll tell you this. This is what works for me. When you focus, when somebody does something to you, when you focus on things you've done to other people, sins you've committed, I think you'll find it much easier to forgive them. So anything you think about that somebody's done against you, you think about something you've done against God or other people. Will you do that? She said, I'll try it. I had a prayer with her, hung up. She called me back not 2 weeks later, and she said, Rod, it's working. I said, good. That's great. She said, I'm learning to let things go, but I'm focusing on my own sins, things I commit, instead of somebody else's. I said, well, there you go. Well, I still hold by my counsel. I think that's the way we do it. God is saying, if you focus on yours, I'll take care of theirs. What are you doing, you see? Because so many times we're distracted from ours by judging somebody else and theirs. Let it go. Let it go. But focus on ours. You know, just holding that is one of ours, you see. Just feeling this anxiety, this hatred, this bitterness. God says, that's sin. Let that go. Be freed from it. Then the third thing he gives us here, he says, be careful to grow. The next blank there's grow in faith. Luke 17:5. Be careful to grow in faith. Apostles saw the need for greater faith to forgive. Greater faith. Well, what they're saying is I trust in Him, and the more faith we have in Him, the more confidence we have in Him, the more belief in Him, all those are synonyms of faith, you see, the more I'll forgive. I'll let these things go. So really the point is that Jesus is making here, focus on Him. And as we do, we overcome. They saw their need for strength and power. How long has it been since you thought about your need for strength and power? We should think about that often, because we're not capable of very much on our own in and of ourselves. But we're capable of unbelievable things with Him working through us and in us as far as faith is concerned. Not a quantity of faith, but a quality of faith. Now get that part. It's not a quantity of faith. How much faith you got? God says, I'm not worried about it. I'm concerned about quality of faith. What kind of faith do you have? He said, just have a childlike faith. That's good enough, you see. A childlike faith. Just trust me. Trust me when nobody else will trust me. Trust me when you hadn't trusted me before. Just trust me. I'll do that. I don't know how you do this, but in my prayer life, when I pray, when I ask God for something, in the same prayer that I ask Him, I thank Him for doing it. I believe He's going to do it. I wouldn't ask Him to do it if I didn't believe He's going to do it. When you ask Him for something, thank Him for doing it. The reason I say that is because Jesus, remember standing outside the tomb there where Lazarus was in the tomb? So before we open the roll of stone and all this, here, let's pray. He has a prayer. He asked God, do this, not for me, but for these people here. Thank you for doing it. He thanks the Father before it even happens. Before Lazarus raised from the dead, he thanks Him. What He's doing is giving us an example, people. He said, when you ask God for something, thank Him for it at the same time. It's going to happen. I tell Him, I don't care if it happens in my lifetime. Just do it. Just take care of this. This is your will. Let it be done. Thank you for doing it, you see. Trust in Him. Now I challenge you, I encourage you, the Scriptures challenge you and encourage you. Try it. What do you got to lose? Talk to God with this confidence of, this is your will. Understand it's His will. It's His will to be done, you see. Asking Him for it, going, okay, this is the thing. The quality of faith. If you had faith as a mustard seed, that's a living faith. A living faith. If you got the faith of mustard seed, the mustard seed is the smallest plant, the smallest seed that the Jew would plant in his garden. But it grew up to be almost like a tree in the garden, you see. Mustard seed is almost like a Bermuda seed. You see the seeds on the Bermuda grass when it comes up and when it's growing. That seed is so small. He said, if you got this living faith, it's unbelievable what your faith will do if you'll trust in God for it, this believing faith. It's not I believe in God, it's believing in God's, in the Bible's faith. And the Bible's faith, a living faith. It does something. Seemingly, your next point, they're seemingly impossible. This faith does things that are seemingly impossible. I love it because there's things I don't know a way in the world this is going to happen. I don't see it possible. In my lifetime, I don't see it possible. I don't see, but you'll do it. You're going to do it. You do it. The Lord is interested in faith that moves mountains. The Lord's not interested in faith that moves mountains and trees. He said he's just using this example. He says the tree will root it up and go away, or the mountain will be moved. Well, he's not talking about literal physical trees and literal physical mountains. I think about the little old lady that lived in the mountains up in North Carolina. And every morning she got up, she'd heard this verse that the Lord will move mountains if you'll pray. And she had this mountain out there. When she looked out her back window, every day when she was washing her dishes, she had this window and she's looked at the mountain. So she closed those curtains, and for a week she prayed while she was washing her dishes, Lord, move that mountain. Lord, move that mountain. Lord, move that mountain. Lord, move that mountain. Finally, the last day, she opens up the curtain. She says, Lord, move that mountain. She opens up the curtain. She says, that's just what I thought. It's still there. That's kind of how we pray. Lord, do this impossible thing. But we don't really go, wait a minute. That's not what he's saying. He said, no, wait a minute. I'm talking about physical mountains. But get this part. He's talking about something much more difficult than physical mountains. Did you know mountains are moved every day? Every day road crews move mountains. They take dynamite and they blow up the mountains. They take big uke trucks and they take bulldozers. They move mountains all the time, you see. Physical mountains are moved. But that's much easier than curing a person of pride. You try to get a person to lose their pride, you see. You try to get a person to overcome guilt and shame and fear and anxiety. Those are mountains. Unmovable mountains for us. But God says, I can move them. I can do that. I can take all those things away from you or anybody else. Just ask me. But it's more difficult to change those things than it is to move mountains. It's incredible what he's saying here. He's interested in faith that moves me. Faith that moves me. That's real faith. Is it changing me? Is my faith changing me? Am I the same as I've always been? Does your faith move you to obey God? If your faith is not moving you to obey God, it's not real faith, you see. Real faith always changes us into being like Him, you see. Trusting Him, obeying Him. It moves us to become like Him. Faith, your next blank, number 10 there, live faith. Live faith does something. Real, true, live faith always does something. Hebrews 11, 4 through 8 tells us. Hebrews 11, 4 says, by faith Abel offered unto God. Verse 5 says, by faith Enoch walked with God. Verse 6 says, without faith it's impossible to please God. Verse 7 says, by faith Noah built an ark. Verse 8 says, by faith Abraham obeyed. You see, real true faith obeys. Obeys. So many times people say, that I believe. What kind of faith? They're saying, I got faith. That's what they're saying. If they say I believe, that means they got faith. I say, okay, what are you doing? What? What are you doing? What makes you think you got faith? Real true faith does something. That list right there we give. Offers, walks, impossible, does the impossible. Build an ark, obeys. It's a real true faith obeys, you see. Sometimes it serves us because we think somebody obeyed the gospel because they believed. You can't believe without obeying the gospel. If you really believe, you're going to obey the gospel. You're going to do something. Real true faith does something. Don't ever think for a minute people that's not doing anything got faith. They don't have faith, you see. Real true faith people are doing something for God, you see. My father, it rolls me back in my memory of years ago, my father used to call me every week when I was working Westview Boys Home. Son, what are you doing? What are you doing? Well, Dad, I'm out here raising boys. We're taking care of the boys. It's this orphan's home and these kind of things. Well, what are you doing, though? Well, I'm running a ranch, and the boys are working with me. But son, are you winning any souls? Are you bringing anybody to Christ? Well, Dad, we're pretty tied up. We've got 60 boys here. I'd have all my... Son, that's good. But you need to be bringing people to Christ. What's the thing? What's going on? I'm going, well, Dad, finally, after 3 or 4 years, it got through to me. Wait a minute. It don't matter what all you do. If you're not bringing people to Christ, if you're not working, putting His stuff here first, then there's something wrong. So many times we're busy with a lot of things. We make our excuses. But God said, okay, but what souls are you bringing to me? What are you doing? What are you doing? See, daily we need to ask ourselves, what am I going to do today for the Lord? If I really have faith in Him, I really believe in Him, I'm going to do something. And worship and be in the worship services, and for those of you who are home, some can't come. But are we not coming because we're making an excuse, or are we not coming because we don't want to? It's not convenient, you see. True, real faith does something. True, real faith shows up. I love what Barry Bryant said years ago. He was almost like a god when his football coach down in Alabama. And I went back to Alabama after I was 14 years old. I couldn't believe how people just worship Barry Bryant. But Barry Bryant said, I don't care how much potential a boy has. If he don't show up, I don't need him. I thought, wow. I wonder if God's that way. He doesn't care how much potential you got. If you don't show up, He don't need you. Well, He needs you. He loves you. At the same time, showing up, being there to help somebody, being there to serve, being there to worship, being there, you see. Real true faith, it does something, you see. Always does something. No one can say he believes in God and refuse. You next make they refuse to do what God says. No one can say and really mean, I believe in God, and then refuse to do what God says. If God says give, they give. God says love, they love. If God says forgive, they forgive. Whatever God says, that's what to do, if we really believe. There's an old story about a man walking a tight wire. I told this story to someone this last week. Across Niagara Falls, he put a tightrope across Niagara Falls. And he walked across Niagara Falls with a pole all the way into Canada. He turned around, all the people in Canada who was there, there's a bunch of people there cheered him on, people in America cheered him on. The wind's blowing, the rope's going. He walked all the way across, got over there. How many people think I can walk back? Oh, yeah, you could do it. Well, they didn't want to see him walk back. They wanted to see him die. And so he turned around and he walked back all the way to America. Got over there. He said, how many of y'all think I can go without my pole? Oh, yeah, you could do it. You got to have the pole. So he walked all the way across without his pole. In America, in Canada, they said, how you think I can walk back? They said, oh, yeah, you walk back. He got back to America and he got a wheelbarrow. And he pushed this wheelbarrow. Who all thinks I can push? Well, yeah, he'll fall for sure with the wheelbarrow. He pushed the wheelbarrow all the way to the other side. He got in Canada. He says, what about that? He said, you're the greatest. You're the greatest. Does anybody think I can push this wheelbarrow back? Oh, yeah, you can do it. He said, do you think I can do it with a man in it or a person in it? Oh, yeah, you can do it. You can do it. Who will get in the wheelbarrow? You see, we're all saying God can do all this, but we're not getting, well, not me, not today, not at my age, not with my stuff, not with my... God said, well, if you really believe it, you get in the wheelbarrow. Am I getting in the wheelbarrow? Step up, Christian. It's time. Put up or shut up. That's what God said. Come on. Get in the wheelbarrow. Well, so many times we're going, oh, but I got a family, I got a job, I got to do. God said, yeah, sure you have. But you got all that, but you don't have faith unless you get in the wheelbarrow. You turn it over, turn it completely over. Then number 4 says, make sure we have true service. Make sure we offer true service. We must never underestimate the importance of I. God must get all the glory. So when we're doing these things, we go, wait a minute, I got to be careful. This is really not about me, it's about Him. Jesus, after working in the field, said after working in the field is done, there's still more work to be in the house. We've done all the work He's commanded us. We're still unprofitable for servants. What do you see in this? We've done everything God commanded of us, but He said, now then, you're still unprofitable servants. See, I think this is the key to the whole thing. He said, now this is the thing. You've worked out there, you're wore out, you're dirty, you're tired, and you come home, and He said, I'm not the head person. The master doesn't serve the servant. The servant serves the master. I'm still an unprofitable servant. What's that mean? That's humility. That's humility. You see, all this is impossible without humility. All of it is possible with humility. Everything we've talked about so far in this lesson is impossible. No one does these things with pride. I. But God said, no. Forget you. Humble people pick right up on it, you see. How proud am I? Is this out of my zone? Is this not thinking? Wait a minute. He says, think about it a little bit. You're still unprofitable servants. We can never say, I've done enough. God owns, your next blank there's owns me a home in heaven. Owes me. God owes me a home in heaven. We've been profitable enough. That's pride. We're going to work in heaven. There's things for us to do as far as heaven's concerned. There's nothing to do in hell. You ever think about that? When we go to heaven, He says, I've got work for you to do. In hell, there's nothing for you to do. Part of what's going to make hell is boredom. You'll be bored out of your mind. This is the most worthless, helpless, terrible place can be. There's nothing in the world for me to do. Did you ever think about that? See, in America, we're all about going, I have the American dream and get to where you don't have to do nothing and everybody waits on you and all this sort of stuff and everything. And God says, no. And I'm not opposed to retirement. Don't think I ever will, but I'm not opposed. If you're retired, don't get this wrong. But you stop working, you're worthless. You're worthless. Keep on going. Keep on doing things for you and for other people, for God. Because so many times we go, well, now that I can sit back. And God said, no, careful. That temptation, we started out with temptation. That temptation can damn you, you see. No. If you think I don't have to do nothing, God says, you got it wrong. Right now, when you're free, you got time, you got things to do. And you might not be getting paid for it like you have before. And you may be retired. But you keep on doing what you can do. That's really what makes life worthwhile. That's what it means. Next blank there's means to be a Christian. Number 1, holiness. Don't cause other people to sin. Number 2, love. Forgive others. Number 3, faith. Work as a mustard seed faith. Number 4, service. Serve, surrender, and sacrifice. Self-surrender and sacrifice. Not just to be baptized, sit in a church, take communion, and give money. It's not just about that. So much more. Are we convinced or converted? Your next blank says converted. A lot of people are convinced, but how many are really converted? Be converted in heart, soul, mind, attitude, words, life, everything. Jesus asked yourself, just ask yourself, do I keep others from Jesus and make it difficult for them to walk the right road? Blank there is difficult. Do I act with wisdom, love, patience towards erring and the weak? Do I put obstacles in their way because of indifference? Your blank there is indifference. Do I forgive others quickly and help correct others when they fall? Thank you for being with us today.